What's up, y'all? Focus Daily TV. We back speaking some more about this banking institution and the banking charter. And once upon a time, certain individuals rose up due to the will of God and tried to prevent these situations from occurring and pointed out, hey, this is not what we constitutionally agreed to. And today we're going to speak about this hero, Andrew Jackson. Not saying that he was all good and all of that. I'm just saying when God called, he stepped up and tried to prevent the formation of this corporate bank, which led to this new world order and this fiat society that we're currently find ourselves indulged within. Trying to find a word. So, yeah, let's get to it. Andrew Jackson and his interference.
The biggest fight of Andrew Jackson's presidency was his battle against the Bank of the United States. In 1816, Congress had issued a charter creating the Second Bank of the United States. The bank's stockholders all came from the elite classes of the Northeast, and they were
So this charter was like a permission slip. Sure, y'all can conduct business and have an economy and a slight form of banking, but just remember that the gold is God's. As long as y'all keep that straight, y'all can continue to do commerce within this land amongst our sovereign people, the Afro-Americans. That's what the charter is.
appointed, not elected.
The president of the bank was a Philadelphia aristocrat named Nicholas Biddle. And Jackson thought that Nicholas Biddle was operating the bank for the benefit of Nicholas Biddle and for his buddies.
Even though it was the sole repository
And this privateer pirate buddies.
for the federal government's deposits, the Bank of the United States remained a private institution. While paying out dividends to the government, it also made a profit for its stockholders.
They didn't
Paying out dividends, biblically known as tithes.
just simply take the federal deposits and stick them away in a vault. They take those deposits and they loan them out. And they make money by loaning those deposits out. And so the bank is making very, very good money at this time period.
Jackson was the first American president to come from a poor background. Like many ordinary Americans, he hated the idea of
Truth be told, Jackson had a little Afro-American in him. And more importantly, he followed the will of God in insisting that these foreigners abide by the rules of the Constitution that they approved.
a private bank run by a small number of wealthy stockholders.
Jackson wanted to get rid of it. And he said he was going to get rid of it. And whenever Jackson said he was going to do something, he usually ended up doing it, regardless of the opposition.
No, that's not really him. That's just the allegorical portrait that history uses to ideologically subvert us. So stay tuned. More to come.
When the bank's charter came up for renewal in 1832, Jackson vetoed the bill, declaring that the bank was unauthorized by the Constitution, subversive of the rights of the states, and dangerous to the liberties of the people. With his re-election approaching,
Jackson tried to tell them, hey people, they're up to something that is completely evil, demonic, and no good. We must rise up and stop this.
Jackson had staked his entire presidency on the issue of the bank.
And it was a triumph for Jackson. He was resoundingly
See, around the time of these banking wars, a civil war also popped off. That's how serious the situation was. Even though the Civil War was the theater of war, was produced and directed, nonetheless, it was a war.
re-elected. He was a very popular man. So the Bank of the United States knew that it was toast.
Once he was re-elected, Jackson took his revenge on the bank one step further. He decided to remove all of the federal government.
That portrait looked it more like the Afro-American that's in him.
Government's deposits from the bank and placed them in smaller local banks that
Excuse me,
he
y'all.
selected personally. His critics called them his pet banks.
In order to do that, he has to have the Secretary of the Treasury remove the deposits. The first Secretary of the Treasury he goes to, he says, I want you to remove the deposits. And this Secretary of the Treasury was a bank man and says, well, I'm sorry, President Jackson, I can't do that. He has this person moved to a different office.
With his gray afro.
The second Secretary of the Treasury, a guy by the name of William Duane, comes into office. And Jackson says, well, Mr. Duane, I want you to remove the federal deposits. And Duane says, well, I'm sorry, Mr. President, I can't do that. And he summarily fires Duane. The third
He did his best to prevent it, people. That's the moral of the story. Let's keep going.
Secretary of the Treasury is Roger Taney, who's moved over from the Attorney General position. And Jackson says, Mr. Taney, I want you to remove the federal deposits. And Taney says, well, yes, Mr. President, I'm happy to remove those federal deposits. Now, Taney wins as a result of doing this. He ultimately becomes Chief Justice of the Supreme Court when John Marshall passes away.
That's right. God sent him someone.
Jackson's enemies in the Senate were so infuriated by what they considered Jackson's expansions of presidential power that they formed a new opposition party.
He actually was trying to stop this fiat bond world that you all are living in today.
Party known as the Whigs. And with the death of the Bank of the United States came the end of an era of centralized control over America's monetary system. The following decades would be a time of laissez-faire as economic power moved away from the federal government and towards private businesses.
That's it for today. Focus Daily TV, another episode. If you made it this far, hit that like button, subscribe, support the channel. # Focus Daily TV.